Well, the battle over the census and redistricting now in the hands of the Supreme Court. Yesterday, justices heard oral arguments on President Trump's plan to exclude illegal immigrants from the U.S. Census count, which determines the size and placement of House districts. Here to tell us what's at stake is Conservative Partnership Institute Policy Director Rachel Bovard. Rachel, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Okay, so a lot is on the line regarding the outcome of the census. So what the president was saying essentially is that if you're in the country illegally, you shouldn't count as a citizen. But doesn't the census, as specified by the Constitution, it simply looks at residents, people who are living in houses, rather than whether they're in the country legally?
Well, what the Trump administration is proposing is actually two things. For the purpose of distributing federal resources, they're looking at the entire count. But for the purpose of apportionment, which is drawing congressional districts, they're only looking at citizens. And past Supreme Court precedent, particularly Franklin v. Massachusetts, allows the president to make these policy calls. So they're looking at doing this because, obviously, when you draw a congressional district with non-voters in it, you're diminishing the accountability, the representative element that congressmen have toward their voters. They're only elected by voters. They should serve those voters, and that's what the element they're looking at with addressing that apportionment question.
Well, Rachel, when it's hard to, when you look at the tea leaves, hard to tell how the justices ultimately will rule. However, it did sound like a number of the justices, including some of the conservatives, were skeptical whether or not the president had such sweeping power when it comes to the census.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion on the technicalities yesterday, less on the merits of the question itself. But it does look, Justice Amy Coney Barrett raised the issue of, previous precedent doesn't weigh necessarily in your favor. But I think there was a lot of issues of timing. Had harm really occurred? Were they considering this case too early? But it may be that they kick this issue past the point of when President Trump is in office, which would really, harm their case, obviously.
Right, exactly. There was one other case that got our attention in the last 24 hours. The mayor of San Jose and the police chief are urging the county, Santa Clara County out in California, to change their sanctuary city policies because a man by the name of Fernando Jesus Lopez, who had been deported 3 times, convicted of multiple domestic violence things, assault with a deadly weapon and battery of an officer. Apparently, he stabbed 5 people at the Grace Baptist Church, killing 3 and injuring 3 as well. So they look at a case like this and it's like, this guy kept coming back. He was deported a number of times, and yet we let him in. The county does not cooperate with ICE, and now 3 people are dead.
Yeah, with cases like this, it's very clear that California, to a great extent, has already defunded its police because sanctuary city policies like this that have policies of non-cooperation with immigration officials, they are removing tools from the hands of police. And it's essentially like if your house is on fire, the most you can do is throw a water balloon at it because the city has outlawed the use of hoses. It makes no sense, and it puts people at risk.
How do you think things will change during the Biden administration regarding sanctuary cities? Clearly, the president has made an emphasis on that over the last 4 years, but going forward with Joe Biden, what do you think?
Well, all signs point to a much looser immigration system under President Biden. He is talking about undoing a host of border controls, including the Remain in Mexico policy, which was the most successful policy under the Trump administration at reducing illegal crossings at the border. President Biden wants to undo that. So that is... if we look ahead, we're looking a lot like the Obama years in the next 4.
And the president was also able to get rid of catch and release by executive order and the way they enforce the rules. But that's probably going to go by the by, too, right?
I would expect, we haven't heard a lot of specifics from the Biden campaign, but what we have heard, again, points to undoing most of what President Trump implemented, which, again, reduced border crossings to historic lows. And I think that's all going to be undone.
Because it sounds like a lot will revert to the same policies that the Obama-Biden administration had 4 years ago. All right, Rachel,
That's right.
Thank you very much for joining us from D.C.
Thank you.